So going to quadriceps injuries, really the one that gets injured is the rectus femoris. You rarely see the other ones get injured in sport. The other ones get injured with trauma, direct trauma. And sprinting and kicking are the #1 things that cause these kind of injuries. The rectus femoris, why? They think because it crosses 2 joints, and that makes it more susceptible. The anatomy of the rectus femoris extends the knee, flexes the hip, and stabilizes the pelvic on the feet. So some of the things that the way they get injured is during acceleration and deceleration, and kicking happens with 2 things, either with your backswing, not back swimming, that's a different topic Neil asked me to do, and ground contact for the stance leg. So you always think of it as the kicking leg, but really planting hard can also injure that muscle. And so there's two just quick anatomy, there's 2 heads of the rectus. There's the reflected head, which actually attaches to the superior acetabulum ridge, and the regular one that we all know about that attaches to the inferior iliac spine. It's important to know the anatomy again, but for what we're talking about, again, we go back to the central tendon, free tendon, whereas the indirect head that comes from the acetabulum kind of goes down, turns into the tendon, into the muscle, and the one that attaches to the AIIS is just mostly the free tendon. So you get a lot of these injuries in the intramuscular tendon, causes a lot of these types of injuries, and again, but it's sprinting, kicking. Generally, they're very difficult to get. Kicking is usually it's much easier to get back to sprinting before kicking. Kicking is usually the hardest part of the rehab of the rectus femoris injuries. That's mostly it. Yeah, so there's a few more slides that I had, but I didn't have a chance to put them up there. I don't know if anyone has any questions about muscle injuries in general, hamstrings. Was there something that you wanted to know that isn't in the presentation?
Yeah, sure, but so that we're talking mostly there about indirect muscle injuries.
Mm-hmm.
For the direct muscle injuries,
Right.
Did you come across anything that predicts return to play for those? Because some of those can be quite significant.
Yeah, I mean, research-wise, no. Practically speaking, the people who've done on-field management is usually it's a quad. I mean, there aren't too many other muscle groups that get affected by that. I mean, you can get a calf. Compartment syndrome is the major thing you have to watch out for. But putting the muscle under flexion immediately or soon after, and for a period of 8 to 12 hours after the injury, seems to reduce morbidity and time to return to play. Once you allow the muscle the hematoma to develop in a contracted or shortened position, you really have a hard time lengthening it. It's really, you're way behind, and it's very difficult. Return to play is usually based on symptoms. You don't really base it on any imaging. If they have a large hematoma, you can consider aspirating it, but there's not a lot of information. Everyone's concerned about myositis, ossificans. I've seen a few of those in my career, and it doesn't happen that often as far as I've seen. So you really want to manage the symptoms. You want to make sure you can maintain their range of motion, and they can play with a really bad hematoma. As long as they're functionally intact. That's the most important thing.
So which hematomas would you drain? Like what would make you drain?
So I would usually acutely I don't. Within, let's say, a week's time, if their range looks like it's affected by the hematoma, or the hematoma is really not settling down, I may consider draining it under ultrasound. It's so easy to do. You don't always have to do it. One of the things is seeing a lot of bruising. To me is a good sign. A lot of times if you don't see, you worry it's just encapsulated and it's not going to leak out or disperse or get absorbed. But if their whole leg is purple, to me that's a good sign. And usually you can palpate, once you can palpate a decent sized hematoma under the muscle. And ultrasound, of course, we're going to be all using ultrasound soon. You'll be able to see it. So I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think you could do it right away if you wanted to. I don't think there's any harm. But generally, I'm of the mind that it often will resolve on its own. But you monitor it weekly.
I've personally seen it more in contact sports, rugby and football.
Sure.
Where they're playing, once a week, and essentially want the relief.
Yeah,
it's like not ideal,
right?
Likely a hematoma without a big significant muscle tear. If it's blunt trauma.
So direct muscle injuries, that it's essentially a blunt trauma. So you essentially get you'll have a collection. There's not
but
necessarily
functionally, if they have a tear, it's just their function, right? If they get a tear from a direct blow, and they don't have any strength deficits or any range of motion deficits, you don't worry about it.
Right, but just thinking that if they have a hematoma
Yeah.
in the middle where the
Sure.
injury is, that's potentially preventing
Yeah.
it from healing. Theoretically, in
For
my
sure.
mind, like you're draining it, maybe it'll allow the edge
Yeah.
to attach quicker. Whereas if you just have like a bunch of blood over top of an intact tendon or muscle, and you're just draining it for symptom relief, I would kind of think twice about risk of infection for something where
absolutely.
there's no structural damage.
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely
really
risks associated with it.
It's symptom driven.
Yeah.
Symptom and exam driven. Yeah. And sometimes those ones between the muscle layers, they don't go away.
Yeah.
Sometimes those are the ones often you have to drain.
Are you doing serial like imaging, or just clinically palpating it?
Whatever you have clinically, you can tell. The more you can feel you have one to compare it to. So it's you can tell where it is almost just by how it feels. But ultrasound is